I have a no assholes policy at any company that I operate because being kind and compassionate is not a nicety, it is a requirement of being a human being. I think far too often that people in leadership roles, to the point you were making earlier, believe it's all about them. And they can solve the problem, they can do this. And look at all the hard work I did. I'll be very transparent. There's 1,000 people in this room that are smarter than me at the functions that they do, or just generally. There are all these people that work for this company that are giving a part of their day to this company and to me. They spend more time with me than they do with their families in those instances. And if you can't walk into the office and recognize that and understand that people have bad days and that everyone's may not be giving 100%, there may be reasons, or that, like I said before, they're giving so much of their time to you, to the company, the vision that you have as an operator, then you're not a leader.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today, we look at the importance of being a kind and compassionate leader. Now, you may be saying to yourself, I am kind, I am compassionate. I'm going to ask you to dial it up a little bit because I think there's a lot going on inside of our world, inside of our businesses that we're not really tuned into. And sometimes that's, the stress levels that a lot of our employees are carrying. Maybe it's the stress levels that we're carrying and the being overwhelmed or whatever it may be. Just reminding you to be kind and compassionate leader is part of my job, but I really want to give you some tools behind that. Today, our special guest is Blake Sabatinelli, and he is the CEO of Atmosphere TV. They've made the Inc. list before. They have about 380 employees. And Blake and I talk about being a compassionate leader. He includes in there kindness and the ability to be transparent, but he talks about what's needed in today's working relationships so that people feel understood. We're able to motivate them through the challenges and to really keep things on the same page. And all of that unpacked in today's episode with Blake. My name is Gene Hammett. I'm an executive coach. We have a leadership development arm to the business. And those two things play well together because you can coach executives and you can coach managers. But when you coach both, when you really are making an impact at the different levels within the company, you have something that's special. We've been doing this for years. And if you're curious about how we could serve you and your growing company and what you're doing and address some of the challenges you may be having, then I'm going to invite you to something pretty special. This is a chance for you to tune in to other CEOs of other Inc. 5000 clients. Some of them are my clients. Some of them are just people who are previous guests on this show before, or it could be people who are like you listening into this. If you truly want to be a better leader, you want to be a more effective leader, then come to the executive virtual conversations. Just go to coreelevation.com/virtual conversations. Inside that, you'll find the topics that we have each month. This is only once a month. And if you feel like there's something of value to you and you're a good fit for this and you want to participate, or maybe you just want to listen in, just sign up at coreelevation.com/virtual conversations. Now, here is the interview with Blake. Blake, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am fantastic. We're going to have a great conversation about your leadership principles that guide your company. Tell us about the company, atmosphere.tv.
Yeah, so Atmosphere TV has a pretty simple premise behind it. We make television, but we do it in a little bit different way than everybody else. We make television for businesses. So while every streaming company that you know of has been fighting for your eyeball while you're sitting on the couch, we look at things a little bit differently. We make sure that the couch looks a little bit different, and then we serve you television that's audio optional in the businesses that you go to. So whether it's a bar, a restaurant, a gym, a medical facility, or dentist's office, we create channels like Chive TV, like Atmosphere Sports and others that can be seen in 65,000 different businesses and reach 131 million adult viewers on a monthly basis. So we zigged when everybody else zagged in the streaming wars, and we've found a really incredible business along the way.
Fantastic. Where do you see it going over the next 3 years?
Global domination, clearly. Look, over the last 3 years, we've grown from, we had about 8,000 locations about 3 years ago, 65,000 active locations now. But we really want to be present everywhere along the consumer journey. So when you leave the house and you leave the domain of Amazon, Facebook, and Google in many instances, there's an opportunity to be the provider that allows you to be part of that consumer journey in a way that's not obtrusive, and also in a way that is super beneficial and additive to people's experience. So when you go to the dentist office, we want there to be something fun, refreshing, and entertaining there for you to watch and lower your anxiety. And when you go to lunch or dinner with your spouse or your coworkers, we want there to be entertaining content that allows you to look up and have a communal experience and set your phones down. Nothing angers me more in life than walking into a place like a restaurant and seeing a couple looking at their phones, or walking into a bar or pub and everyone's looking at their phones in the bars. It's the antithesis of why those places exist. You're supposed to be there to share a communal experience, and you're clearly not. So, we expect the footprint of this business to continue to grow drastically. We want to be in every place that you can think of, and we're well on the way to being able to do that right now.
Fantastic. Blake, you didn't get here alone. I know that you're not the founder of the company, but you are the CEO, that it's expected to get things right, keep it growing. And it looks like you're having a fun time doing it.
I'm having a fun time on camera. I love being a CEO. I love being a leader. Like any other business, there's a huge number of bumps along the way. You'd have talked to me a few years ago, I'd be far less gray. If I bend my head down, I have a huge bald spot. There's stress that comes along with the work that you're doing, but there's an incredible amount of satisfaction that comes along with doing what you do as well. And the founding team here set everything up for success. Our co-founders, Leo and John Rezig, really came up with this incredible idea and went so against the grain with everyone. And then our other founders, Alan Dubrovnich, Mike Grisco, and Eric Spielman, really put the plan into action that then makes it successful for us in 2023 to be able to operate this company. I'm so thankful to have all of those guys still along with me, along with some other key executives, to make the wheels turn, because there's no I in team, and there's certainly no I in CEO. That is exactly not what we do.
I like this. I talk to a lot of CEOs through my executive coaching, and they seem to not really understand that concept. And in one particular instance, they talk about their time and how they use their time. And I know there's a question in here, but I'm just setting this up for a little bit. But they treat their time as they're the ones that can solve all the problems, have all the answers. And that's not what CEOs do. They truly are empowering people to make decisions, to create strategies, create systems. Have you found your journey to being a CEO one that was difficult, or one that was pretty easy?
I like to. I'll answer your question with a bit of a story. I have a 15-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. My 15-year-old's getting pretty inquisitive at this point, and he's starting to ask a lot of questions about my job and how I got to where I'm going. And I like to remind him of a couple of key things. When you're young in your career, you have to show up earlier and stay later. You have to put in more hours and do better work. But the most important thing along the way is you have to have one incredibly lucky break.
Yeah.
And I had that lucky break when I was 28 years old, when I had a mentor of mine recommend that I go up to Washington, D.C. and run digital operations for a large broadcast company. And that's what parlayed everything along the way. And there was more breaks along the way in there. I say all that because I had that lucky break, but I busted my hump to get where I am today. So the road is not easy. It's never easy. There's no such thing as an easy road to anything, no matter what role you're holding within a company. And I empathize with anyone who's doing the jobs, because I've done a lot of the jobs that exist in my company. And so I wish it was easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it. And once you make it here, it gets harder. There's no such thing as I made it.
Yeah.
It's I made it, and oh my God, I have to deliver on the results now. And that puts immense pressure on anyone who sits in the function to make sure you're executing and doing the job. And it makes it feel like along the way that no, it's never going to get easier. It's only going to get harder.
I know that you've got a pretty big company, Atmosphere TV, about 380 employees, give or take.
Correct. Yeah, about 300. Yeah.
And that's a challenge in itself to manage at that level. I think a lot of people forget that it changes over time. Like being the CEO of a 20-person company is very different than being one of 100. And that's very different than being one of 380. Can you elaborate on some of the changes as the company grows and your job as a leader?
The biggest challenge you have as you scale a business like this up is keeping everyone on the same page and in the same culture. We have a somewhat distributed company. We have offices around the country and one in the UK, and making sure that you can employ at least, as my chief strategy officer, Eric Spielman, puts it, the ability to have macro culture in microcultures within those businesses. That way you can keep cohesion. It's a huge challenge.
Mhm.
The more people you add, clearly, the harder this gets, because it's easier to silo parts of the business. It's easier for people to become disconnected with each other. And then keeping that cohesion just ends up being the whole purpose of your role in most instances. So, ton of headaches as you get bigger, for sure. I've seen this company had around 80 people when I started. We've fluctuated up and down as business needs have evolved. My last company was the same way. It's about 30 people when I started, and stripped that down a little bit and built it up to over 200 people. And the circumstances, I would say it's not even every 100 people. It's like every 10 to 20 people. It just changes that I make of the business a little bit more. And it just makes maintaining that culture along the way even more challenging.
Blake just said something that's really interesting. The more people you have, the more challenges that come up. You may also say to yourself, wow, these people are tough to lead, and it's really tough. The drama is overwhelming, and it's always something. Can't these people just be adults? Now, I joke when I say that, and the reality is sometimes they can't be adults. Maybe there's some trauma. There's some things that play in the background, and our job as leaders is to understand our people, to be kind, compassionate leaders, but also to be a guide and really address some of these deeper issues. Now, yes, you will have more challenges with the more people, because people are emotional and they change, and what used to work doesn't work anymore. And sometimes it's personal, sometimes it's not. But you've got to be a compassionate leader, because that is one unifying thing that you can control and that you can help people through. Now, we'll say that you can be too compassionate, because this has happened to some of my clients. They're too nice, or they're too want to be liked. It really is something that you've got to wrestle with, the balance of it. But I think most people aren't as compassionate as they could be as leaders. That is dangerous. Back to Blake. Blake, we came here to talk about not just the company and all that, but we talked about the leadership that makes this work. And I know our team does research on everyone, and we come back in and we're like, okay, what does it take for you? And you had mentioned 3 words: transparency, compassion, and kindness. No one's going to argue that those aren't a part of especially compassion and kindness are really a part of just being a nice person. But how does this all connect to your style of leadership?
Well, first and foremost, I have a no assholes policy at any company that I operate, because being kind and compassionate is not a nicety. It is a requirement of being a human being. And I think far too often that people in leadership roles, to the point you were making earlier, believe it's all about them, and they can solve the problem. They can do this. And look at all the hard work I did. I'll be very transparent. There's 1,000 people in this room that are smarter than me at the functions that they do, or just generally. There are all these people that work for this company that are giving a part of their day to this company and to me. They spend more time with me than they do with their families in those instances. And if you can't walk into the office and recognize that and understand that people have bad days, and that everyone's may not be giving 100%, there may be reasons, or that, like I said before, they're giving so much of their time to you, to the company, the vision that you have as an operator, then you're not a leader. And then that all kind of comes full circle when you have those feelings of empathy and compassion and kindness, but being transparent about it. I just had a conversation with one of our teams today over lunch, and it was all about transparency and all about candor and all about being kind and empathizing. My job is to be a communicator and to get people to be motivated to do things on the company's behalf. It is not to go do the work myself. That's not leadership. Leadership starts with realizing there's human beings at your company, and everything else stems from that.
You just said something that reminded me of a coaching conversation I had just this morning. I'm coaching pretty much every day of the week, but this morning, a client of mine was complaining about an employee, and I have to ask one of those coaching questions. I don't share that many on the podcast. I don't even really talk about it that much, but this just really aligns to that. I get that we can easily complain about someone who's not doing the work we expect of them. They're just not performing at the level. And actually, this person was on a performance improvement plan, but he figured out that they've been lying to him. And I asked him the hard question: how did you contribute to this? And he's like, I've jumped in way too many times to put out the fire, to solve the problem. and they didn't learn to do it themselves. And that's what you've been talking about. Like when you jump in and solve the problem, it feels good, right? To be needed. But that's not real leadership, I think. Tell me a little bit more about the way you see that part of your job.
I love being an individual contributor because being an individual contributor means that there's a beginning, a middle, and end of the task, right? And so, like, I love doing home improvement projects because there's a beginning and there's a middle and an end. There's no such thing as a beginning, middle, and end of running a company. This doesn't exist. It's such a bizarre thought to even imagine that you just can't even put two and two together there. So it just doesn't make any sense to my mind. But you're 100% right in pointing that out to your client. Look, I may know more about a topic, and there are instances where I do have to step in, but you have to involve the person that might need the additional assistance in the conversation so they can hear what you fixed or how you fix it or who you talk to or the words that you said or any combination thereof. Because early in my career, and I have a whole host of former employees that can probably attest to this, I thought I could get everything done myself. And I think part of that is being in your late 20s or early 30s and being, in a high rising position. And part of it's just being a jerk. But you learn pretty quickly when you burn out that you are not shouldering this burden by yourself. Those people have always been there all along trying to help. And those that weren't, it's a different conversation that has to be had. But I think for any CEO or any executive who's sitting in a role, you have to stop and turn around on occasion. Because there's people following you. They believe in you. They believe in your vision. They believe in the company's vision. And you do have to make sure that they're involved in the process, or that you can at least teach them how to handle things. Otherwise, you're going to be by yourself the entire time. You're going to be complaining that you've been by yourself all the time. And you're going to have all those people that are standing behind you, the people that believe in you, the people who believe in the vision, are going to quit.
Yeah.
They just will. That's just how life works. And so, you just have to get out of the way and do what I do. Most of my day is spent talking to people. The same way I'm talking to you, I have a nice lounge area in my office and I sit and talk to our employees and I help understand what's on their mind or explain the vision if they're concerned about it. That's leadership.
I want to start landing our plane here. We started off with this whole concept of leadership, talking about compassion and kindness and transparency. And when I first looked at those, I'm like, okay, those are important parts of leadership. But now that we're talking, it's coming up with more of the conversations that happen inside my executive coaching, which is I ask a lot of my clients, who do you need to be in this stage of your company? Not what do you need to do, but who do you need to be? Now, in your words, if you were answering that question with what you've already told me, I need to be compassionate. I need to be kind. I need to be transparent to be the leader that my team deserves. Is that fair?
It is. I'll add two more to that. You have to be present and truly visible. You and I talked about families, and I'm the first person to admit that I'm guilty of not being present all the time when I'm sitting in my house because my mind's always elsewhere. But there, just the same as here, you have to be present. You have to be mindful. You have to be there. You have to be available to the people that are around you, whether it's 300 people or 3 people. But you have to be more than that. You have to be visible. You have to be there to give the attaboy. You have to say good job on that. You have to go congratulate someone for booking a big deal. So not only do you have to be in the room and be thinking actively and present in that room, you have to be visible, and you have to be a nice person, and you have to be transparent, and you have to have empathy and compassion for human beings. All those things have to be true. And as a CEO, you're going to get that wrong a lot. You're going to be missing 1, 2, or 5 of those things on some days. Everyone has a bad day. I have bad days. But you always kind of have to come back around to those kind of core principles of being a decent human being. That's all leadership is. People follow people they like. And so be a decent human being, treat people with compassion, care, transparency. This isn't hard. These are things we learned when we were kids, right?
I know I posed the question to Blake about who are you being, but let me frame it in for you. This is a question I use inside my coaching that is very powerful because I will hear people complain about something and they will obviously be frustrated, but they'll want a solution to this problem. And I will ask them the question, who are you being in this moment as you describe this to me? And they will say, frustrated, angry, impatient. And I will respond back, is that the best space for you to actually make a decision or move forward with this? Find an answer, be creative. And 99 times out of 100, it's never the way of being that gets them what they want. They have to learn to be patient. They have to learn to be kind or compassionate. And they have to remind themselves of this, and they have to do it over and over and over until it becomes much more natural. Your way of being won't change that much over time. It doesn't change like your to-do list. Your to-do list hopefully changes every day because you're getting things done, but your way of being is meant to guide you. And when you can put down in words, maybe it's being kind and compassionate or being transparent. When you can put it down in words, you're much more likely to hit that target than if you don't put them down. So that's my call to action for you today, is define who you're being right now, but then also define who do you need to be as you lead this company through this next stage. And then put those words down and really start living those words. Find yourself, catch yourself when you get out of alignment with it. That is one of the tools I use inside my executive coaching. Hopefully you find that valuable. If you have any other questions, make sure you reach out to me. Back to Blake. It's not hard, but a lot of leaders think that we need to be, direct and overbearing, and we need to lead by fear. Now, you and I both know that this doesn't work long-term. It might work short-term to get some people aligned together, but long-term, we need a very different approach to leadership.
Yeah, you have to be direct. You have to give honest feedback.
Yeah.
You don't have to be mean about it.
Agreed.
Those two things they're not mutually assigned to each other. Like sometimes you do have to put on a bit of a more stern approach to things. But other times you just have to tell people the truth. Hey man, you didn't do that right. Let me tell you why. Please don't do it again. It's so much better than yelling at someone. They don't have to go together.
We've had a great conversation here. I'm going to give you a chance to wrap up. Is there anything that you feel like we've missed out on this whole concept of being a compassionate, kind leader?
We haven't really talked about something I think is super important. We haven't talked about making sure you try to put yourself in your employee's shoes on a daily basis. The moves and actions that you take as an executive in many instances have a real and profound impact on your employees. And if you're not stopping and thinking about how those actions are impacting them, and they're not, those thoughts that are coming through by putting yourself in their shoes aren't having a material impact on how you think, then I'd recommend that you go take a vacation. Step away for a minute, because you've lost your sense of self and your sense of empathy. And if you can't operate by thinking about the impact of your actions on your employees, then you're not fit for leadership right now. Look, I try to take, around the holiday break off, and I take a summer vacation with my family. And that's my time to recharge, because by the end of it, you're worn out, you're mentally worn out, you're physically worn out. And you're not always thinking with those core principles of mine, and not always making sure that you're thinking everything through. It's a good time to go back and recenter back around that. And that allows you to think like a real leader, as someone that can lead people to a goal, to an end state, instead of someone who's looking at a spreadsheet of numbers. You just have to separate those two, and you just have to step away when that happens.
Blake, that's a good place for us to wrap up today. I really appreciate you being here, sharing your insight.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I love how Blake has explained some of these elements of being kind and compassionate and being transparent. I love how he talks about how to get others to really be motivated through the challenges they may have. All of this is necessary, and this is maybe just a reminder for you that you've got to be present with people. You've got to truly, be the leader that they want to follow. And if you do this by fear alone, it might work in a short period of time, but it's not ideal. In long term, it falls apart. I've seen it happen, and I want you to avoid that nightmare. When you think of leadership and you think of growth Think Tank. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.